What if the most powerful love stories in K-drama were between two men? In a world where same-sex love still faces silence, these 10 Korean BL couples broke through. With raw emotion, magnetic chemistry, and stories that made us believe in love beyond limits. They didn't just act. They showed us how love can be soft, bold, messy, and beautifully real. So which couple made you feel something? Comment below, speak your truth, and show your support for LGBTQ+ love on screen. Because these stories aren't just fiction, they're a reflection of the love so many still fight to live out loud. Han Tae-ju and Kang Gook, Where Your Eyes Linger, 2020. In the world of Korean chaebol dramas, you've seen it all: power, privilege, and betrayal. But Where Your Eyes Linger flipped the script. Meet Han Tae-ju, rich, reckless, the kind of boy who's never heard the word no. And beside him, always just a step behind, Kang Gook, his bodyguard, his best friend, his shield. But let's be honest, this wasn't just security detail, it was tension, longing. That slow burn only K-dramas can do. But with a twist the genre rarely dares. Two boys on the edge of something more. Because every glance lingered just a second too long. Every fight hurt more than it should. And under the surface of their carefully controlled world was a love neither one had the words for. Kang Gook was trained to protect Tae-ju from danger. But no one trained him to protect himself from Tae-ju's smile. Their relationship walked a razor-thin line. Friends, brothers, maybe something else. But never lovers. Not out loud, not in that world. And Tae-ju? He was bold in every way except the one that mattered. Teasing, testing, pushing boundaries, until the tension snapped like a rubber band pulled too tight for too long. When the confession came, it wasn't fireworks. It was raw. Quiet. The kind of moment that doesn't shout, but stays with you. Because love like theirs wasn't about spectacle. It was about survival, and choosing each other in a world that told them to look away. Where Your Eyes Linger didn't try to dress their love up in metaphors. It stared it down. It showed us that even in the smallest moments, patching up a scraped hand, sharing silence in a dimly lit hallway, love can be loud, even when unspoken. And maybe that's why this series hit so hard. It wasn't fantasy, it was real. Messy, beautiful. Two boys falling for each other in the worst and best possible way. And through it all, the message lingered. Queer love deserves to be seen, not just hinted at. So if you've ever had a love you couldn't name, or a friend who meant more than they were ever allowed to, this story's for you. And hey, maybe love doesn't always need grand declarations. Sometimes it just needs someone to look back and not look away. Yeon-woo and Yoo-han. Color Rush 2020-2022. Imagine living your whole life in black and white. That's the reality for Yeon-woo, a high school student who sees the world in grayscale, stuck in a dull, muted version of reality. No blue skies, no red roses, just gray. And worse, he doesn't seem to care. Emotionally numb, socially distant, just trying to survive another bland day. But then, in walks Yoo-han, and with one look, Yeon-woo's world explodes into color. Not metaphorical color, real color. Vivid, shocking, blinding. He's what's called a probe, a rare person who can awaken color in a mono like Yeon-woo. And suddenly, everything changes. From a quiet, foggy existence to blushing skies and heart-pounding hues. But falling in love with your light source? That's a whole different kind of dangerous. At first, Yeon-woo resists, hard, because when you've lived without color, too much beauty can hurt. But Yoo-han? Persistent, playful, a little reckless, and totally irresistible. Their chemistry? Instant, like two puzzle pieces that finally snap together. But this isn't your usual teen romance. It's layered. Yeon-woo fears what it means to depend on someone so deeply. Yoo-han hides a gentle vulnerability behind his teasing smile. Together, they navigate not just love, but identity, fear, and a society that still pretends their kind of connection doesn't exist. There are jokes, awkward tension, and moments so sweet they'll make your heart ache. And just when it feels safe, fate throws a cruel twist. Love is never simple, especially when it's rare. Color Rush isn't just a story about seeing color. It's about seeing each other, fully, honestly, without apology. Yunwoo and Yuhan remind us that love isn't defined by gender or norms or safety. It's defined by how someone makes your world brighter, even when the world says it shouldn't. Their journey? Messy, tender, courageous. And for anyone who's ever felt like love made them too much, this is a reminder. Love, in any shade, is worth everything. So if you've ever seen someone and felt your whole world shift, you already know what Color Rush is about. Woo Taekyung and No Shinwoo. Woo Taekyung didn't walk into high school looking for romance. He just wanted connection. A place to stand without shrinking. A voice that didn't echo back alone. With his soft charm and unfiltered honesty, he often stood out, and not always in a way he liked. But when he transferred schools and found himself in the middle of the student council, everything shifted. There, in that sunlit room of quiet tension and cold stares, sat No Shinwoo, arms crossed, words sharp, eyes unreadable. The kind of boy who could freeze a room with one glance because it was easier than letting anyone in. Taekyung was all warmth. Shinwoo was all walls, and somehow fate decided they belonged in the same story. At first, they clashed like thunder and sunlight. Taekyung didn't understand why Shinwoo seemed to despise him. Shinwoo didn't understand why Taekyung made his heart race, and not in a way he was ready to admit. But that's the thing about love when it sneaks in through the cracks. It doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it hides in stolen glances, in breathless pauses. In the way two people argue, because they care more than they're ready to say. Shinwoo, who always kept his distance, started to lean in. And Taekyung, who just wanted to be accepted, found himself being seen, truly, deeply seen, for the first time. Their relationship wasn't about sudden kisses or grand monologues. It was about trust, built brick by brick. It was in the way Shinwoo's voice softened when he said Taekyung's name. In the way Taekyung stopped looking around for approval and started looking straight into Shinwoo's eyes. What made their story unforgettable wasn't just that it was gay, it was that it was real. Two boys growing up, growing closer, trying to figure out who they were, individually and together, under a sky that still sometimes frowned on love like theirs. They didn't kiss to shock, they didn't confess to prove a point. They simply fell in love, quietly, unapologetically. In a culture where same-sex love is often erased, their story didn't just offer representation, it offered hope. Hope that queer love can be soft and slow and sometimes a little awkward, and still be valid, still be beautiful. Sometimes the most powerful thing is simply choosing each other and holding on. Jang Jae-young and Chu Sang-woo, Semantic Error, 2022. In a world ruled by logic, Chu Sang-woo was untouchable. Timetables, precision, silence. He lived like life was a clean line of code. Then came Jang Jae-young, loud, unpredictable, impossible to ignore. The human equivalent of a software bug that Sang-woo couldn't debug. Their first meeting, a disaster. Their project partnership, but somewhere between slamming doors and exchanged glares, the tension began to shift. And when it did, Semantic Error gave us the classic enemies to lovers arc, but elevated it with nuance, raw chemistry, and two actors who turned friction into fire. This wasn't just a love story. It was a collision. Park So-ham and Choi Jae-hin didn't just share scenes, they shared tension. Not the manufactured kind. The kind that hums under every glance. The kind that makes viewers lean in, hold their breath, and whisper, "Wait, did he just look at him like that?" Every smirk from Jae-young was a challenge. Every flustered response from Sang-woo, a silent scream for closeness. They danced around each other like magnets, pushed apart by pride, pulled together by something neither of them could explain. And yes, the height difference? Iconic. But beyond the visuals, what made this couple unforgettable was how real it all felt. The awkwardness, the hesitations, the vulnerability hiding behind every insult. It wasn't scripted love, it was discovered love. In the conservative landscape of K-dramas, Semantic Error dared to code a different kind of romance, one that didn't apologize, didn't end in heartbreak, didn't treat queerness as a side plot or a punchline. Instead, it gave us something pure. Two young men navigating emotion like foreign territory, choosing to open their hearts despite fear. Their love was quiet, hesitant, but deeply powerful. And in doing so, it broke more than just norms. It broke silence. Did this love story rewrite something in your heart? Let us know in the comments. Speak up. Support queer stories. Celebrate love in every form. Because sometimes, the best kind of error is the one that leads you to love. Seoul and June, Oh Boarding House, 2022. Seoul never meant to fall for anyone, especially not that tenant, the tall, aloof, frustratingly handsome June who walked into his quiet little boarding house like a storm in designer jeans. At first, their chemistry wasn't sparks, it was fireworks and fire alarms. June was cold, Seoul was nosy, and yet somewhere between the breakfast bickering and the midnight hallway run-ins, something started to shift. Their awkward silences grew heavy with things unsaid. A glance lingered too long. A brush of hands felt different. Seoul found himself doing laundry with more enthusiasm than ever, just for a chance to fold June's hoodie. That's when he knew he was in trouble. This wasn't one of those love stories where passion erupts and everything falls into place overnight. No, Seoul and June were a slow burn, the kind where every moment felt charged with what if. What if June really smiled back? What if Seoul wasn't just a landlord, but something more? And what if it wasn't just in their heads? It was the little things that gave them away. June lingering in the kitchen too long, Seoul making June's favorite meal without asking. There was sweetness, yes, but also fear. Fear of messing it up, of being seen, of the world outside that still doesn't always understand two men falling in love. But inside that boarding house, it was their world, their bubble. A place where love, quiet, real, imperfect, was finally safe to bloom. Their story wasn't grand. There were no rose petals or rain-drenched kisses. Just two men, figuring it out. Loving in a space where no one had to apologize. And that's what made it beautiful. Because sometimes the loudest kind of love is the one whispered through everyday moments. Seoul and June taught us that love doesn't need spectacle. It just needs truth. And while their romance started behind closed doors, it spoke volumes. To every viewer who ever felt like love was something to hide, they were a quiet revolution. So if anyone tells you same-sex love is less than, point them to Oh Boarding House. Because Seoul and June didn't just fall in love, they showed us what it means to stay. Same-sex love is love. It's tender, it's real, and it deserves to be seen. The Tasty Florida, 2021. Let's be honest, when you tune into a BL drama about a rooftop noodle restaurant in Busan, you're expecting soup, steam, and maybe some salt. What you don't expect is a full-course slow burn between a shy newcomer and a broody chef with biceps that could stir broth and break hearts. That's exactly what you get when Lee Hyun arrives and meets Seon-woo, the restaurant owner with a quiet intensity and a gaze that could simmer ramen without touching the stove. At first, it's awkward. Lee Hyun can't boil an egg. Seon-woo barely speaks. But love finds its way, like steam rising off a bowl of noodles on a cold day. The real magic doesn't come from recipes. It's in the glances across the kitchen, the silent teamwork, the way Seon-woo gently corrects Lee Hyun's chopstick grip, or the way Lee Hyun watches Seon-woo slice scallions like it's a love language. Their chemistry bubbles over slowly, never rushed. It's not about grand confessions, it's about little moments. A shared drink after hours, a hand that lingers too long, a late-night rooftop breeze that carries more emotion than a scripted kiss. It's a romance built on patience, trust, and, yes, a lot of noodles. And when Seon-woo finally lets his guard down, it's not fireworks. It's quieter, warmer, more real. In a country still learning to openly embrace same-sex love, the Tasty Florida serves up something rare. A queer love story that doesn't shout to be heard. It simply exists. No heartbreak ending. Just two young men discovering that love can bloom anywhere, even in a tiny rooftop restaurant overlooking the sea. Their story isn't about surviving. It's about living and choosing to love, openly and fully. Seon-woo and Lee Hyun remind us that queer love doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. Sometimes it just needs a table for two, and the courage to stay seated. Go Young and Sim Joo-ho, Love in the Big City, 2024. Under the neon haze of Seoul's sleepless skyline, Go Young wasn't just chasing dreams, he was running from silence. Silence that followed him from childhood to coffee shops. Silence that crept into his relationships like a ghost. And then came Sim Joo-ho, loud in the softest way. He didn't speak in grand declarations, he just stayed, showed up, made space. What started as flirtatious banter over overpriced flat whites turned into late-night ramen runs, quiet shoulder brushes on the subway, and the kind of eye contact that says, "I see you, all of you." In a city that demands you keep moving, they stood still for each other. In that stillness, it was revolutionary. Let's be real. Dating in Seoul is hard. Dating as two men, it's basically a full-time job with zero pay, judgmental neighbors, and your mom asking when you're bringing a nice girl home. Go Young and Joo-ho didn't just fall for each other, they fell through loopholes. From hiding affection in alleyways to avoiding landlords who don't rent to friends like that, their love had to be smart and funny and fiercely soft. They joked about being each other's emergency contacts, but in truth, they were. The emergency, the safety, the calm. What the world saw as rebellion, they simply called breakfast in bed and remembering the other's ramen order without asking. It's 2025. We have flying taxis and AI that can write wedding vows, but somehow two men holding hands in public still make some people flinch. Why? Because some folks confuse different with dangerous. But here's the truth. Go Young and Sim Joo-ho never asked to be symbols. They just asked to be seen, to laugh at the same memes, to cry at the same sad movies, to exist loudly, quietly, however they damn well pleased. We weren't born to fit a mold. We were born to feel, to connect, to love, without shame. And if that still scares people, maybe it's time they stop looking away and start looking closer. Because love, real love, doesn't whisper, it roars. Let their story remind us, the heart was never meant to hide. Jaewon and Jihyun? The Eighth Sense fan favorite. It didn't feel like a love story at first. It felt like a ripple, a flicker. A moment where everything paused and someone saw you, really saw you, for the first time. Jihyun wasn't searching for love. He was just trying to survive college life. Part-time jobs, loneliness, and the constant pressure to blend in. Then came Jaewon. Cool, older, magnetic. The kind of guy who makes a simple hey feel like a spark plug to the heart. Their connection began where the waves met the shore. Not loud, not obvious, but undeniable. Jihyun didn't know it yet, but he wasn't just learning how to surf. He was about to drown in someone else's gravity. What unfolded next wasn't your typical swoon fest. It was awkward, messy, frustratingly real. Jaewon, calm on the outside, was a storm underneath. His past relationships left scars he couldn't name. Jihyun, eager and open-hearted, kept reaching into a space that didn't always welcome him. And yet, they couldn't stay away. Their moments together, on motorbike rides, at parties by the sea, were electric with tension and tenderness. The Eighth Sense captured something rare. Two souls tiptoeing on the edge of something profound, while the world kept whispering, "Don't." This wasn't just about gay love. It was about learning to want, to be wanted, and to be brave enough to say it out loud. Jaewon and Jihyun didn't kiss just to make hearts flutter. They kissed to break silence, to challenge what love should look like. They fell in love, not because it was easy, but because it was true. And in that truth, they gave thousands of viewers the courage to feel something they'd buried deep. The Eighth Sense reminded us that queer love isn't a side story. It's not experimental. It's not fleeting. It's real, raw, and worthy of being told with care, not caution. Their story isn't just for the LGBTQ+ community. It's for anyone who's ever loved in secret, who's ever feared being misunderstood, and who's ever longed to be loved without conditions. Because love, when it's real, doesn't need permission. It just needs a chance. Hare and Donghee, the time of fever. You know that kind of love that doesn't start with fireworks, just a lingering glance in a quiet room? That's Hote and Donghee. One's hot-tempered and guarded, the other, quiet, almost invisible. But in the stillness of their feverish world, something starts to smolder. Hote wasn't looking for love. He was barely looking up. And Dongyi, he wasn't used to being seen. But when Hotae finally did look, really look, it wasn't lust, it was recognition. Like, oh, there you are. I didn't know I needed you until right now. That's the kind of subtle ache this story carries. Tender, tense, and almost too real. This wasn't your typical swoon-fest BL. No exaggerated slow-mo kisses, no beach dates with soft lighting and fake laughs. Their love came from sweat, from misunderstandings, from nights when anger masked longing. Hotae pushed people away. Dongyi stayed quiet because he was used to being forgotten. But when they finally cracked each other open, it wasn't dramatic, it was raw and beautiful. There's a scene, just a simple moment in a hallway, where a hand brushes another. No music, no dialogue, but your heart, it skips. Because love between two men doesn't need to shout to be heard. Sometimes it just breathes. By the end, this wasn't just a story of two boys falling for each other. It was about choosing to stay when it would be easier to walk away. About learning that being soft is not weak, and that being gay, being yourself, doesn't need a rainbow filter to be valid. Hotae stopped running. Dongyi stopped hiding. And in that fragile, final frame, they didn't just hold hands, they held space for each other. That's what queer love looks like when it's allowed to exist. Not flashy, not filtered, just fearless. Lee Dae-yeol and Jo Tae-hyun, a shoulder to cry on. At first glance, Lee Dae-yeol and Jo Tae-hyun had all the makings of a K-drama disaster. A misunderstood archery prodigy. A smirking rebel with rumors wrapped around him like a designer scarf. They weren't just different. They were fire and ice tossed into the same school hallway. But here's the twist. Sometimes the greatest tension isn't rooted in hate. It's chemistry waiting to combust. When Jo Tae-hyun leaned in, closer than necessary, and smirked that infuriating slow-motion smirk, Dae-yeol's arrows missed more than just the bullseye. They missed logic altogether. Suddenly, detention wasn't punishment. It was proximity. And in a world where boys weren't supposed to look at each other that way, Dae-yeol looked. And Jo Tae-hyun didn't look away. What made this love story unforgettable wasn't just the stolen glances in quiet classrooms. It was the aching silence in between, the fear, the hesitation, the question lingering in both boys' hearts. Is it safe to feel this? Jo Tae-hyun, for all his bravado, carried wounds too deep to joke away. And Dae-yeol, the boy with perfect form, was crumbling under the weight of false rumors that threatened to snap his scholarship and his pride. Yet in the moments, they let their guards down. While patching each other's scrapes, while saying everything without speaking a word. We saw it. That rare kind of love that doesn't rush to declare itself, but instead blooms quietly in shared pain and shy forgiveness. A love that dared to show up, even when the world wasn't ready for it. A Shoulder to Cry On didn't just give us a teen romance, it gave us a revolution in whispers. Two boys, no melodramatic speeches, no rainbow flags waved in the wind, just raw honesty in a society still scared of softness between men. But Dae-yeol and Tae-hyun taught us something simple and brave. Love doesn't need approval, it needs truth. Their story wasn't about coming out, it was about coming closer. And in doing so, they became a quiet anthem for every teen who's ever felt different, but dreamed of being seen. Because sometimes, the bravest thing a boy can do is love another boy openly. Arrow by arrow, heartbeat by heartbeat. Sang-ha and Jin-won, Mr. Hart and 20. In the world of competitive running, being fast isn't just a goal, it's a personality trait. Jin-won, he's all business. Focused, driven, allergic to distractions. The kind of guy who times his water breaks. Then comes Sang-ha, his new pacemaker, who doesn't just run, he glides. With a heart bigger than his stride and a smile that could break tension faster than a starter pistol, Sang-ha is the unexpected spark in Jin-won's controlled world. At first, sparks meant conflict. Jin-won didn't ask for help. Sang-ha didn't ask for permission. But sometimes, chemistry doesn't wait for approval. Sometimes it just laces up its shoes and runs straight at you. What started as reluctant teamwork soon turned into something else. Something unspoken, soft, and stupidly obvious to everyone except the two of them. Jin-won begins noticing Sang-ha's laugh, how it fills a space like light. Sangha starts memorizing Jinwon's mood from the way he ties his shoelaces. It's not a sprint anymore. It's a slow, emotional marathon. They don't say I love you with words, but with early morning warm-ups, shared water bottles, and glances that linger just a second too long. You think it's just training? Please, we've all seen that look before. That's not cardio. That's love. Gentle, patient, and kind of annoyingly sweet. In a world where same-sex love still struggles for space, Mr. Hart dares to show it in its purest form. Quiet, determined, and beautifully ordinary. No flashy confessions, no dramatic obstacles, just two boys, falling for each other, one heartbeat at a time. Jinwon learns that vulnerability isn't weakness. Sangha learns that sometimes love requires staying still for someone who's always running. Together, they remind us, love isn't about who crosses the finish line first. It's about who stays by your side through every mile. And if that isn't a metaphor for same-sex love finally getting its moment in the spotlight, I don't know what is. Songshi on and Jin Hong-suk, You Make Me Dance. Let's be honest, when we first met Jin Hong-suk, he looked more like your average overworked loan shark than someone about to fall head over heels in a BL fairy tale. And Songshi on? That boy was twirling through life with nothing but a dream, a bruised heart, and a pair of ballet shoes. But the moment they collided, one chasing debt, the other chasing purpose, something shifted. Not just in the plot, but in the air. Suddenly, every glance lingered a little longer. Every silence, louder than words. You could tell from their first awkward living room scene, this wasn't just about money anymore. This was the beginning of a slow burn connection, quiet, tender, and achingly human. You know what's oddly romantic? Sharing a cramped apartment with someone who technically owns your debt. But in You Make Me Dance, that awkward setup becomes a sanctuary. Between late-night ramen, hallway arguments, and clumsy kitchen dances, the boundaries between enforcer and artist dissolve. Jin Hong-suk, behind his icy suit and silent stares, starts melting. And Songshi on? He sees something past the facade. A man who's lonelier than he lets on. Their love doesn't explode with drama. It tiptoes into the room, settles on the couch, and waits patiently to be noticed. Their chemistry? It's the kind that doesn't demand attention, but holds it. Like background music you suddenly realize you've been feeling all along. By the end, this isn't just a love story, it's a lesson in quiet courage. Song Shion learns to stand tall, not just on stage, but in life. And Jin Hong-suk? He discovers that real strength isn't about control, it's about letting someone soar. Their journey reminds us that love between two men doesn't need to be loud or revolutionary to matter. It just needs to be real. You Make Me Dance doesn't scream for attention, it whispers to your heart. And in a world that often writes queer love as tragedy or fantasy, this little show gave us something better. Honesty. Love is love, awkward, beautiful, slow, and sometimes paid in monthly installments. But when it's real, it doesn't just make you dance, it makes you believe. What we just witnessed wasn't just a lineup of on-screen romances. It was a reminder, quiet, powerful, and beautifully real, that queer love exists everywhere, even in the heart of Korean drama. These 10 couples gave us more than kisses and cliffhangers. They gave us softness in a world that often demands silence. They showed us how two men can fall in love, gently, bravely, without apology. And in a culture still learning to embrace LGBTQ+ stories, that matters. Because love, real love, doesn't need a spotlight, it creates its own. We don't just talk about queer love, we celebrate it, one story at a time. Dive into our other videos for more unforgettable love stories. Drop a comment, hit like, and show your support for queer visibility in Asian drama. Love is love, and we're just getting started.